Or
yeah, they should be.
There's Sophie. There's Jerry.
hi.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
So I'll just give it a minute there as people start joining. Sorry, we're slightly delayed. We'll kick off now in 1 minute. As a few more people are joining. Okay, I might just give a quick introduction as people are coming in there. So my name is Laura McCormack. I am the Arts Services Coordinator here in Westmeath. I'm just going to give a quick overview and introduction and then I'll hand you over. So speaking today will be Grace Dignam. Grace is the new Creative Communities Engagement Officer in Westmeath, and Miriam Mulrennan, our Arts Officer, will introduce the session as well and give a quick overview of our Creative Ireland community grants. We'll have Jerry Callahan and Sophie von Malson speaking for about 5 to 10 minutes each, just to give an overview of their projects, 2 projects that were run very successfully in 2023. So as we go through the meeting, Grace will introduce Sophie and then Jerry. We'll probably be speaking all in all for 30 to 40 minutes altogether, and then there'll be time for a quick Q&A at the end. So you'll be able to put your questions into the chat and into the Q&A box. We're going to leave all participant mics and cameras off just so we can run through the slides, which Grace will start sharing shortly. Then yes, if there's any issues, any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A, so you can let me know there. But other than that, I'm going to slide into the background now and let Miriam give you a quick introduction.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everybody. It's great to see such a good turnout. Just to say welcome to the, I think now 7th year, 2016-17 was when Creative Ireland started. Grace has some stats in there that you will see, but it has been quite the initiative in terms of allowing us to support communities and creatives in the county. By far the largest portion of the money allocated year on year goes into community grants. We're very anxious. We're not, it is the broader, more expansive term creative as opposed to artists, which would be what the Arts Office would be generally in the business of kind of focusing on purely professional artists. It is a slightly wider catchment, but that has worked to our benefit and the benefit of projects as well. So we're in the next iteration of the second 5-year plan. There is a Creative Ireland community plan in every county. To some degree, it's got quite fixed parameters because obviously he who pays the tune or calls the tune pays the viper, you know the metaphor I'm looking for. So we would have had a lot of dialogue with Creative Ireland national team about previous years, the nature of things in Westmeath, the kind of art forms that are strong, the types of creative areas where we're trying to give more support. And in that regard, Creative Ireland would very much have been very upfront about sort of saying this is where the money is going to be focused thematically in the coming years. This is what the next 5 years looks like. And so, to be honest, from a practical point of view, we create strategies that allow us to respond to as much of the funding that we know will come available as possible. So there's a practical element to that. We could create all sorts of lofty thematic ideas ourselves in our strategies, but if nobody's going to fund it, then ultimately that doesn't make any sense. So we would have had a very strong eye on the funding and the themes, and you see the same themes across a lot of our funders and initiatives at the minute around wellness, around climate change, around marginalised communities. You know, there's a kind of a pattern, I guess, to the areas of focus from a governmental, from a central governmental level at all times. I'm really not going to do much of the talking here. Happy to come back in when there are questions at the end. I guess just to clarify, this is an information session about process. And with that in mind, I'm really aware that there's probably, of the 26 people now here, I'm sure 25.9 of you have all done multiple applications and know the bones of that. But you would be amazed. Last year we had applications for up to 300k, when that was in fact 300% of what we had available to offer. So sometimes we have to look at 75 and 50%. So things get very competitive very quickly, as you can imagine, with that volume of applications. We look at that very closely. We look at that with the national team in Creative Ireland. We try and find the fairest and best way to not overly slim down projects, but at the same time to support as many as we can. And that's a balancing act at all times. So this session really is very much about housekeeping and how to make sure your application from a presentation point of view is as good as it can be. It's not the session on content and your specific ideas. We're very happy to talk to you about those. In fact, we're anxious to start dialogues as early as possible. But there are 2 other sessions lined up for that. There are drop-in library sessions, and there are other opportunities where we can actually start to kind of have that dialogue with you about your projects and answer any queries you might have, or give you any steer that you feel we might be able to. So just to reiterate, this session is very much, and Grace has done a lot of work on putting together things you'll already have seen, and you'll go, gosh, I know I have to attach my CV, or I know I have to give supplementary information. You'll know that, you can't miss your deadline. You would be amazed how many applications, though, have got these gaps in them, and that's not to be critical. It's a busy time of year for applications all around, so we get that, but there's an onus on us to advise you of the things we see year on year, and so that's where it's coming from in terms of reminder of just the look and the shape, in terms of presentation on projects and the kind of nuts and bolts stuff. The content of your projects, really looking forward to chatting to you about it now that Grace is on board. We have a resource we never had previously. Truthfully, in the past, applications came in, they were processed. There was a huge volume of applications in the first quarter. The culture team made the decisions, and then notifications went out. The capacity of the Arts Office, because it was just myself, to actually do much by way of support, other than ask for some updates kind of mid-cycle, and then as we got to the end of the year, that was really all we had the bandwidth to do. Now with Grace on board, we have high hopes that we can give you more support, and we're anxious to do that as best we can. What we want to do is have the best applications we can, because the culture team this year made a decision, now that we're quite far advanced with this initiative, that it was the right time to bring in an independent panel. And I think that's a smart move, insofar as the culture team is very much the same people who've been at the core of this: libraries, heritage, chairperson, directors. And we have done our job as best we can for the last 5 years. But I think now to bring in external expertise, with some internal, who can look with a different and a subjective eye at projects, and make those decisions and those recommendations back to the culture team. That independent panel will very much be made up of expertise, of course, expertise in the creative sector, expertise specifically to Creative Ireland, probably another Creative Ireland coordinator in my role in another county. And I think that will enhance the project and enhance the feedback we'll be able to give you. In the past, that's always been kind of quite generic as well, and we need to look at, are we able to give more specific feedback? So be aware, it's a highly competitive round. If last year was anything to go by, tough decisions have to be made. I would just mention one quick thing on your budget, and it was something that was mentioned last year, and Grace may reference it as well. Quite often budgets are kind of, built up to the point where they come close to the amount being sought, and there's no real easy way to fix that. I would be opportunistic. If I was applying for something, I would try and apply for as much of it as possible. But bear in mind that the panels looking at applications look at, if not hundreds, thousands of budgets over the course of the year, and can spot that type of territory very quickly. I know that sometimes having to give 75% because of volume of applications can make that seem attractive, but I would say just do work on your budget so that it reflects as near as possible what you're going to do. We hear that in terms of feedback and reporting, that can be a little bit of a stuck point at the end of the year, and we get that there's a lot we have to ask for, although in the scheme of things, Creative Ireland is probably a good deal more light touch than a lot of funders I deal with. We have to ask you for what our funders ask us for. So, for example, this morning I got an email from Creative Ireland auditing some projects from 2022. That's not unusual, and it will never be unusual. It's taxpayers' money, so we get it from central government, they give it to us, so we have to ask those questions. It can seem administratively unwieldy sometimes, and I get that. Believe me, when I opened that email this morning and I saw 2022 audit, Creative Ireland project, need more paperwork, my heart sank a little bit as well. So I know that feeling, but with taxpayers' money, we're never going to get away from that. We just aren't. It's how it is. On a separate matter, and we won't be getting into this today, but I've had some feedback around not being able to kind of, just some groups have said we don't know what's going on in the Arts Office. We have a really, really comprehensive social media presence at the minute. Laura's done huge work there. We have a newsletter monthly. We try not to kind of over email or over kind of communicate, because that also creates fatigue. So on a monthly basis, we scan the kind of funding landscape for creatives specifically, and most particularly for artists. We put that into our newsletter. So if you're not signed up, you're not getting it. In the past, we've kind of emailed everybody that we knew was involved at the Arts Office, but now obviously with permissions, GDPR, if you're not signed up to the newsletter, please do. And that is where you will hear what is going on, as well as, of course, Facebook, Instagram, and the Westmeath Culture website. The Westmeath Culture website is a collaboration with ourselves, Heritage and Libraries, but it's interesting, obviously, to keep an eye on what funding and opportunities they might have as well. I'm going to step back now. I've said more than I was scheduled to. There's one more slide where I might just come back in about one of the strategic priorities, just to give a little bit of context. But I'm happy to hand over to Grace, and I'm looking forward to you all working closely with Grace. She will give you her mobile. I mean, literally, that's a resource that it's up to you guys to use, and we're delighted to have it. And Grace has fabulous experience in working in creative environments. So thank you so much, and I'll be here for the duration of the session.
Perfect. Thanks, Miriam. So firstly, just to welcome you all here, and I'll get started just by letting you know what we're going to be talking about today is the process of applying for the Creative Ireland grant. As Miriam said, a lot of you will have applied for them already, so I'll kind of focus on anything that might have changed this year. We're going to talk about the strategic priorities for Westmeath. Who can apply for the grant? We'll give some examples. Jerry and Sophie will be talking about their projects from 2023. A bit of advice on putting together the application, and also on reporting on the project once it's over, once the application process is complete. So firstly, this year, the main difference with the application is that we've gone with a submission software. If you'd applied in previous years, we used a Word document. We've gone with a submission software. The link is up on the Westmeath Culture website, and it's in the information booklet that you would have received about the application process. The application form is broken into 3 sections. Part A is your project details. So that's the description of the project, the target audiences, the project type, all of that kind of information is in Part A. In Part B, we have the applicant details. So that's by whoever the contact person is for the project, you fill in your details so we can reach you, and also information about the creatives and the community groups that are involved in the project. And then Part C is just a couple of boxes to tick to say that you understand certain elements of the process that we have to, as Miriam mentioned, there's certain things we have to do. So they're the final details about like timelines for the projects, terms and conditions of the projects, all of that. You're able to save partially completed applications. So if you're in the middle of it and you realize you need something and you need to step away, down the bottom there's a save button, and it'll let you just send a link to yourself to continue it. So if at any stage you need to stop the process, you can come back to it just by scrolling down. Couple of things we'd like to flag is just the extra bits you need to attach to your document, just so you can have that ready before you get started. You need CVs for the creative professionals involved and creative practitioners involved in the project. You need links to your online presence. That can be a website, but it can also be your Facebook or your Twitter or your Instagram, any of your social medias. And we need a list of all the creative practitioners who are involved and how long you expect they will be involved with the project. And then finally, what we need is a budget breakdown. So this is how much you're requesting from this grant, any other grants or sources of incomes you're expecting for this project, and then a breakdown of your expenditure for the project. That is 2 tables that you'll fill in on the document. The only other things we need attachment wise are we need grant awardees are responsible for their own insurance cover. So before any grants are issued, we need evidence that you have insurance. But also if you're working with young people, you or the organisation you're involved with need to have a child protection policy. That's incredibly important. And any projects with people under the age of 18 do need child protection policies attached. Then we have, as Miriam mentioned, we have the Creative Ireland strategic priorities for Westmeath. In 2023, Westmeath launched the Culture and Creativity Strategy for the next 5 years. Within this document are the 5 strategic priorities for the Westmeath Culture and Creativity team that they've laid out for Westmeath, County Westmeath. This year on your application, and this is slightly different for those who have applied before, you're asked on your application which of the 5 strategic priorities your project most aligns with and why it aligns with that one. We have the 5 strategic priorities here. Firstly, we have creative industries. So these are our aim or our priority is to cultivate opportunities that connect with local industries, creative practitioners and communities to support cultural and creativity activities that drive economic returns locally. Diversity and access is the facilitation of capacity of culture and creativity to innovate and collaborate in achieving priorities locally around social cohesion, greater health and well-being, with cognizance for the rural and urban makeup of the county and the growing diversity of our communities. Creative youth, we're looking to empower young people through cultural and creative processes and strategies to realise and enhance individual potential for young people. Climate action and sustainability, we're looking to harness the power of culture and creativity to animate greater awareness, behavioural change and meaningful engagement on the profound environmental changes we are witnessing. And then, Miriam, do you want to discuss the Westmeath Culture team?
Sure, thanks, Grace. And just even hearing Grace read those out, what came into my head was, ooh, clunky. But if I go back before I mentioned the 5th priority, you can see what we were trying to do. If a scheme becomes available through Creative Ireland that is looking specifically at health and well-being, well, we can find a way through our 2nd priority to apply for that money and then to make it available to you. And that is why they are, I suppose, necessarily clunky. Sometimes these strategic documents can be a bit of an onerous and unwieldy thing to deal with. But if you kind of bear in mind that we're doing our best to put our best foot forward so that we will qualify, we always have to have things listed in our corporate documents. That's how local government work. So we're doing our best to make it as expansive as possible and as possible for our communities, our creatives to be able to apply. So that's the kind of catch-allness of why they are worded in that way. So we talk about health and well-being, we talk about individual, we talk about collective, we talk about environment, we talk about creative practitioners, we talk about economic drivers. And these are, I suppose, to some degree you could argue they're buzzwords, but decisions get made at central government, what the priorities are. Then we try and take those priorities and make them work in a way that in Westmeath we are as application ready as we can be for Westmeath, and then that cascades down that we are as ready and as kind of in that space as we can be for our communities. It seems like a clunky process because it is. The 5th priority is probably not one you'll be referencing in your applications. And the reason that's in there is every year we see patterns, and it's just because that's the nature of us as people and communities. For example, during COVID, there were very clear patterns around, how we do our storytelling, how we collect our stories and where we represent them. So, excuse me. So we have a responsibility as the creative and culture team to see if there are areas where we can intervene, because 5 or 10 applications seem to be asking for or looking at the same thing or indicating that there was a gap of sorts. For example, on that one I just mentioned around, I suppose, storytelling tradition and oral histories, what we did in 2021 was the culture team made a decision to actually engage in a bigger project that was around helping groups and creatives in gathering stories, and we brought resources into libraries and we brought training in. So I suppose it's that particular 5th priority, I would say, is less for you as applicants and more for us as custodians of the schemes under Creative Ireland, so that we can step in when we see something that we can maybe bring the capacity and the infrastructure of Westmeath Arts, Heritage and Library to bear on a project that might have wider impact. So that was just to explain that, because I know we see applications coming in where somebody has ticked all of the boxes. That's not a box you need to be ticking, I don't think. I mean, when we have our other sessions about talking about projects specifically and their content, maybe, but I think you'll be looking at one of the other 4 priorities. And what I would say, I mean, having read them out here, we can help you again when we start to talk about your projects in the upcoming sessions. We can help you do that matchmaking. To my mind, I spent a lot of time working on those 4 priorities, and indeed talking to Creative Ireland nationally to make sure that I had it on my radar, anything that they would be focused on in the coming years. So I did a lot of kind of imaginary and hypothetical matchmaking, what this project might look like, where it might fit, and I feel fairly confident that there aren't very many projects that wouldn't fit into one of those. It's not a bonus to click all of them, you know, and sometimes on an application that can speak to a certain lack of sureness about what your project is. I've seen panels think that before, when, you know, priority 1's ticked, priority 2's ticked. Having said that, there are, of course, you might have a project that's situated in a youth context, but its primary focus is around climate action. Absolutely, and that would make sense. But I would say just think about that. It's not the biggest part of the criteria and the scoring mechanisms that we, again, have to apply to these kind of rounds. But ring us if you need help. Pick up the phone to Grace. We have these conversations all the time, so we're more than happy to do a bit of matchmaking if that helps. And that's me over and out.
Thanks, Miriam. Yeah, so our strategic priorities, as listed, they are, sorry, they're on the screen there, but the next slide. Who can apply for creative community grants in Westmeath? So applications are welcome from community groups, organisations and venues, artist collectives, creative practitioners, curators. Can individuals apply? Sorry. Yes, individual creative practitioners can apply with collaborators. Creative Ireland grants do not cover solo projects. I'm going to quote this from the document. Projects must involve an active engagement between a community group and at least one creative professional. The group can make the call to the artist, or the artist can make the call to the group, but you have to be working together actively on your project. When you're putting together your application, we have some do's and don'ts for you here. With previous years, a bit of work has to go in from the application becoming a public facing advert for the project as such. The information that you submit on your application goes up on the Creative Ireland website as if you want to get involved, reach out to these people. And you can go to creativeireland.ie and Creative Communities, Westmeath, and you can see last year's projects and all previous year's projects. The slight change we've made this year is we've asked you to word it in such a way where you're telling us how you want it to appear. If you're successful, you're telling us how you want it to appear on the website instead of us making that decision. We'll obviously make some edits, and we'll work with projects before we advertise them or promote them online, I suppose is a better word. But that's the main change with how we've asked you to word things in the application this year. So we're asking you to make sure you're using clear and concise language that can be interpreted by the public. Make sure you read the criteria in that application document before you fill it in. Make sure you give yourself enough time. Our deadline is February 14th at 5 p.m. So make sure you're giving yourself enough time before that to get it finished, and ensure you have an online presence for your project. As I said, this doesn't have to be a website. This can be an Instagram, a Facebook, a Twitter, another social media platform, as long as you're sharing details and as long as the public can kind of see what's going on with the project in whatever way that works for you. We're happy with that. So we just need that link. The don'ts are: don't miss the deadline. Don't forget the enclosures, so don't forget those CVs. The application won't let you move on without attaching them, but just make sure if it's asking for the child protection policy, you're attaching the child protection policy there. If you're asked for the CVs, you're attaching them where they need to be attached. Don't forget any of the sections on the application, and don't skip any important information. So anything that there is a box on it that just says, is there anything you want us to know? And just anything you want to add, you can pop it in there. Just finally, before I hand you over to Sophie and Jerry, I'm just going to quickly talk a little bit about Creative Westmeath in 2023. So we had 62 projects across all funding streams. So that's Crin and Oak, that's the grant system, that's all of our other projects. There was 168 creative professionals engaged throughout this process. 86% of our funding was spent directly on creativity through creative professionals and creativity. And as of this year, over 1 million will have been invested in Westmeath since 2018. I know it goes back a bit further, but that's where my figures start. So over 1 million already. And we've also engaged with over 1,000 creative professionals through this process in 2018. So they're just some of the stats that we have on the projects last year and throughout the years. And they're really impressive ones to see. I'm going to hand you straight over to Sophie next. I'll let Sophie introduce herself, but she had a very interesting project called The Land That Feeds Us. So this is perfect, Sophie Van Walton. Hi, I can see you there and hear you. Perfect.
Great. Hi. What I could do if you wanted to, I did make I made a brief slideshow about the project. Because actually it was a sort of staff get together at UCD, and everyone was talking about the project. So I could show them if you wanted to while I talk.
Yeah, that'd be great, Sophie.
Okay, I'm not really an expert on Microsoft Teams. Share screen window tab. Sorry, window.
For me, it's up beside the leave button there.
Microsoft PowerPoint, yeah. Right, is that working? We need permission to share your screen. That's a shame.
It here.
No, that's me, I think. Go to security, privacy, screen recording, give permission, and start sharing. That's kind of a bit nerve-wracking to do that sort of thing in front of a lot of people watching, isn't it? Sorry. I can, or if you want to talk 2 minutes, or I can just talk without. It's up to you. Is there anyone else who's going to talk?
Yeah, Jerry, would you be okay with going first? If Sophie wants to send it on to myself or Laura and we can share it. Jerry, are you all right with that?
Yes, I'll go.
Perfect.
I'll go if you want me to go first.
Excellent. And Sophie, if you want to send it on to us, we can share the screen then.
Okay.
Thanks. So this is Jerry Callahan. Jerry works at New Horizon Refugee and Asylum Seeker Support Group. You can see a still from their project, but I'll let Jerry explain it himself. It was a very good project.
Hi everybody, my name is Jerry. I'm a volunteer with New Horizon Refugee Support in Athlone. We work with about 1,200 forcibly displaced people who are living in various accommodation centres around about the area. I can, of course, tell you for hours and hours what we do, but I won't because otherwise Grace will kill me. But last year we did a very interesting and unusual programme for teenage children living in the various accommodation centres around the area. New Horizon and Gateway Youth Project collaborated with a local video artist, Pádraig Fagan of Matchbox Mountain, to run a series of animation workshops. And these culminated in a production of 4 stop motion videos, which were very, very interesting. We launched them at a lovely event in the Aidenhead AV Library just before Christmas. And we're now in the process of taking them to a whole series of youth festivals. I tell everybody, Cannes Film Festival, here we come. I don't think we're going to make it, but we'll get to Galway Film Fleadh at least. These was funded through Creative Ireland and Westmeath community grants. And the project was very, very valuable in providing opportunities for young people to display skills that they didn't know that they have and skills that they would really like to learn. One very, very useful thing from our point of view is that it didn't require participants to have a good command of the English language. If you're drawing animation, then it doesn't really matter what language you're thinking in, as long as it gets done. So I'd strongly encourage community groups of all sorts to get involved with arts projects with support from Westmeath Arts and Creative Ireland. Above all, don't worry about the subject or medium. Just pick on something that the community is interested in. We've done a series of interesting ones. For example, in 2022, we did a lovely one with the Keith Payne, who was the John Broderick's writer in residence in Westmeath. And what we did do was that we collected stories that my granny told me, from various communities and various cultures around the world, who all of them happen to find themselves in direct provision sites in Athlone. We recorded them with help from Athlone Community Radio. We podcasted the results. And we produced the book. And also, most intriguingly, we put them in both English and the original language into the National Archive. So this means that in 200 years' time, these stories of this particular time and this particular age in the changes in Ireland will get reflected there. I think the ghost of Chief O'Neill, who was the person who saved Irish dance music, was smiling down at us. You have a collaboration with Galway Community Workshop, with Galway Community Circus, to teach really, really useful skills like juggling and stilt walking and tightrope walking. And we're going to go and do 3 year. This will be our 3rd year involved with them, and we're going to have workshops and a big display of skills. This year we've got an interesting a new one there, called a project called Henna and Hairstyles. Henna tattoos are the sort of art form of for young women in the Middle Eastern world. When you get invited to a wedding or something like that, people go and paint patterns on their hands. Really, really wonderful. We got some really lovely ones there. And also, particularly West African young women love their hairstyles. So what we're going to do is we're going to, in cooperation with Ferogia, we're going to do a workshop on this, and we'll do it in photo, and we'll photograph and possibly prepare a beautiful booklet or a brochure with the event. So we will be putting in an application to Westmeath Arts for support for this project. Hint, hint. Arts projects are a really good method of enabling people to grow and develop. I'd strongly encourage any community group to explore the option. Again, don't worry about the subject or medium. Just pick on something that the community is interested in. Okay, shut up, Jerry. You've talked enough.
That's great, Jerry. Thank you so much. You can find, I believe you can find the videos online, can't you? On YouTube. Matchbox is Matchbox Mountains YouTube.
Yes.
If you search that, you'll be able to find them. And they're excellent. So I'd definitely check them out if I were you. Thank you so much for talking, Jerry. We'll hear from Sophie now.
Hey, I've got so many windows open now. I don't know what it is. It's obviously not you. I mean, I would be allowed to share from your side, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. It seems to be funny about the Finder. We'll just have to I could share a Word doc. I don't know, but I can't share. I saved it as a PDF. Can't share that, and I can't share the PowerPoint thing.
No problem. Sophie, we have the video that was made with you, and I can play it silently just so people can have a look at.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like mine is
a little
just
bit about. Yeah, of course.
resume of the project, but actually, I can just talk about it. Let me just ask you, what aspect you want me? What aspect you want me to talk about, or just give a brief resume, or like, because I think my my approach was very specific. So maybe it would help if you asked me a question.
Yeah. Sorry, muted myself. If you just want to talk a little bit about I suppose the process of how you came about this project, and so yeah, talk about your process of how you decided to apply for this project, or do this project, I suppose.
Okay, so I'll give a brief resume. So the idea was, it was like super simple, and I've been telling a lot of people who I know, because I am a farmer. I live on a farm in Westmeath. We have cattle and horses, and I was, going around telling people, hey, I just got some money to slaughter a bullock, like, our neighbors, other farmers, and I knew that they would be surprised that, I call this an art project, but I also knew that I could explain it really easily, which in a way is very sad. That, these days, slaughtering, what we did is, so we have a sort of a post, I mean, it's even post rewilded farm in Westmeath that, needless to say, doesn't make a penny, because, as you probably all know, but I work in Dublin mostly, and people that don't know that, it's like, it's all per kilo. So, if you breed beef, you try and get them heavy, and you do to the land, you force the land, as they call it here, to, grow as much fodder as you can to have your beef as fat as you can, and then you bring it, to the art or the auction. Me being a foreigner and, an urban person all my life, I never really could, I think the one advantage of being that is, like, I can step back further than, for example, my partner can, and say, why? And the answer is always, because that's the way it was, and that's the way it is. And I said, okay, let's just not do that, but go back to how it really was. So we took bullock, who would have been, not to classic slaughter weight, but age, and we brought him to be slaughtered and butchered locally. And then we collected recipes for what they call the fifth quarter, things that are not being eaten anymore of the carcass, things like the heart. And we went around and asked, the people around, 890 was the age group that we were really successful with for recipes for these bits of the animal. And then we cooked them, like my partner in this project is a professional cook. We cooked them with the community, even so I have to say it was mostly actually the Ukrainian refugees who were helping us the cooking, and the school children from Rosemount National School, who we also brought on a tour of this farm, which would be, our neighbors call it old-fashioned, or, as I said, it's a sort of rewilded 40 years ago, or never been unwilded parts of it. And then we put all the recipes on a website, which is there and almost finished. So that's that. And obviously, needless to say, the way I work a lot is I have projects I want to do, and then I look for the right funding application. So this project has been on my mind and heart for the last 15 years, and I was delighted that I was able to do it, because it's by no means finished. And the way I treat projects is like, I get funding from different bodies, and this project I will definitely bring further. And my ultimate aim is actually to prove that it is economically viable to not forest the land, you know, to not spray off, you know, the grass because there's too many weeds in it, and then reseed with, you know, a monoculture of Italian ryegrass, and then spray and fertilize again and take away every hedgerow. So that's really one of my aims, is to, you know, find out an economically viable route for, you know, beef that is not brought up in a way that harms the lands and, you know, is actually against climate mitigation practices and taking away all habitats and not storing water, which is another important element that our farmland could do. So some of you might think, oh, wow, that is not what you think what an art project is, which I think is great. I think the art world has really changed a lot in that way, that, you know, anything that's a creative practice that can alter and open
Sorry there, I think we've lost sound for Sophie. I don't know if she can hear us. She might have just dropped connection, so sorry about that, but just a little bit of context from us as to why we brought both Jerry and Sophie on, is to give just to really show our audience that creative projects can fall outside of the traditional art forms. They can fall yeah, anything, if you can make a good case for why your project is a creative project, we do want to hear from you, and to look outside those traditional art forms, which Sophie definitely did for her project last year. And then from Jerry's perspective, to really be engaging with your community and seeing what would benefit them most. So Sophie, are you back there? Can you hear me?
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay. Well, maybe perhaps if you leave your camera off, it might help with the bandwidth.
Yeah, but maybe I
Great.
said enough. I was just going to say two things. Is
Perfect.
like, if you don't really know which was, I think we applied for one sum and then we got a bit less, which worked really well with our project because we could just leave, you know, part of a work away. But I was just thinking, what if I would have applied to do one thing and I really needed the entire budget? And in that case, it wouldn't really help me to get 2/3. But I see that you very clearly marked it on your application that, you know, the applicants are not necessarily guaranteed to get the entire amount of their funding. So I would suggest bear in mind that you might, if you apply for 7,000, you might only get, I don't know, 5, and then, you know, be good if your project would still work. Obviously, there was Jerry's project that does work, you know, but if you made a big bronze, which, you know, wouldn't work because you would need the entire amount. And then actually, just to say, I was one of the projects that did tick all the boxes, I think, or 4 out of 5. And I did get the funding. So, I mean, I think actually, I thought that Miriam was really comprehensive talking about it and was really interesting to know. I did there from last year's funding application, I did think that it would be preferred if one ticked all the boxes. So again, maybe something that, you know, was really useful that she made clear here in the talk today, and also I assume wrote it onto the application. And I really enjoyed the process, and it was really great to work with all of you who I met. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Sophie. Just to say, on this year's application, there's a couple of boxes like the creative priorities where you can only select one. So just in that situation, you pick the one that's most applicable, or that you feel is most applicable, or that you feel you can talk the most about. Jerry.
Yes, just to coming in on that particular one, you don't worry about if you don't get enough money to do everything. Remember, there is alternative sources. For instance, we did get money from Creative Ireland to produce the videos. But then what this left us about, we'll say, €1,000 short for the launch event and things like that. So what we then put the squeeze on Longford Westmeath Community and Family Resource community and family projects, and they very kindly came up with the rest to do the events. So that worked out very, very well. And again, it's good to liaise with other groups to do things.
Great.
Yeah, just something to be aware of. So I think that was great that we pointed that out, whatever way you deal with it.
Yes, Miriam.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jerry and Sophie. Just a couple of things I wanted to add that came up there that I think are really useful. The two projects that we've showcased, and I hate calling them projects because it makes it sound like it started and then it stopped. And actually, we really want to see the next iteration, whether that's a little bit more of the same, but with a different sort of focus, or it's a natural progression of the project. So that's a conversation that happens at every panel meeting when they're adjudicating on awards. I just wanted to say that, but also Sophie's point around, you apply for X amount, but you get Y, and then how does that affect your project? And it mightn't always be that you can take a section off. And her example was a good one of creating a bronze. I think what you'll find with Creative Ireland, as opposed to if you were, say, applying for Arts Council or other monies, is the nature of the projects has to be so collaborative that it will almost naturally have multiple parts to it. It'll be almost sectional. There might well be a workshop piece, a community engagement piece, the creation of something or an event, or arriving at a publication or a short film. So hopefully that can work. I can't predict, other than going on previous years, and we're starting to hit the we've passed the 250,000 and starting to hit the 300,000 plus in terms of volume of applications. So that has to be done on a case-by-case basis. Ideally, all the projects that come in that are sort of solid enough or even need a little bit of support, we'd like to be able to support to 100%, but we have to leave that open. But again, I guess this year, having the resources that we have with Grace and the sessions that we're doing, hopefully we can bring some expertise to the mix as well, or maybe point a project in a direction where something they've budgeted we can actually help provide. Don't forget, we have access to a lot of infrastructure and a lot of expertise in the council, so sometimes it might be directing you to also apply because there's a festival piece, a one-day part that we can call a festival, even though it mightn't be strictly speaking a festival, and perhaps we can dovetail into requesting some money through Westmeath Community Development and their festivals fund, or it might be that you need a space or a venue, a few venues across the county to deliver some workshops, and again we can help with that. They're conversations that we've really wanted to be able to have, and I suppose interventions that we've really wanted to be able to make and to help and to support in the past, and we haven't always been able. So again, we've very high hopes, no pressure, Grace, for this year. There was a reference as well to the online presence earlier, excuse me. Creative Ireland are huge on their online presence, and Grace will attest to this. She's probably already been to 3 or 4 sessions, and they talk about the portal, and it is this monster that has to be fed. Now, to be fair, it's where we do everything. We draw down our payments through there. We advertise our projects through there. There's a section for every county. If you're not familiar with it, my suggestion would be get really familiar with it and look at some of the projects in other counties. We pinch wholesale, we take ideas from everywhere from Carlow to Cork and everywhere in between. So feel free, if you're kind of in a bit of a, gosh, I'd like to apply for money, it's the time of year to do it, I'm not really sure what my project will look like. Go and look at other projects and ring us, and we'll put you in touch with those projects or those community groups. Or if you're not sure that there's a community group out there that quite fits what you want to do, but you know what you want to do, like Sophie described, talk to us. We may well know. I mean, this is our bread and butter. We're in these conversations and multiple meetings every day around community, and the focus of local government being very much about and of its community. So again, don't be slow to ring us. Yeah, I just wanted to mention the online piece. The other streams of funding, we might be able to direct you. Now is the time actually to be looking at those. What did Jerry say? He trawled or for other funding, but now is the time. Get onto the Westmeath Community website, Community Development section. They have loads of money and it's very much focused on community. So perhaps it could be, I mean, I suppose they they have a lot of strands. So, for example, festivals are open at the minute, I think. We're going to be doing their information sessions, which means I'll be presenting Creative Ireland and Laura and Grace will be presenting Creative Ireland at the Athlone and Westmeath sessions for community development grants and other resources in the council. What that means is I'll be standing in front of a lot of community groups who may not have a link with a creative person. And letting them know about these grants, and also that stage will be shared, that platform will be shared with Westmeath Community Development. They have a newsletter, maybe just get on that newsletter just so you know when the money is there. So for example, festivals they do twice a year, but Tidy Towns is once a year. You know, the Cathaoirleach Awards related money is once a year, and that is generally always going to be around this time of the year. And that's all. Yeah, hope that's helpful.
So finally, and then we'll take questions if anyone has questions, just to mention that we will be having some library drop-in days. These are for if you want to talk to us about the inner workings of your project specifically. We will be in Athlone Library on Tuesday the 30th of January from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. And we will be in Mullingar Library on the 1st of February from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and then from 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. So if you want to come along to those, you can. It'll be myself and Laura that you'll be talking to at those. So yeah, that's it from us. If anyone has any questions, you can pop it into the chat or the Q&A section now. And that's our follow along details. So you can get in touch with us via arts@westmeathcoco.ie. Just well, if anyone has any questions, they can be typing them. I'm grace.dignam, so first name, last name @westmeathcoco.ie. And my contact information is also in the information booklet, so you can find all of my phone numbers and everything there. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. I don't see any questions just yet, so I'll give it a minute or two. If there are any that you want to pop in the chat box, you can, or as Grace said, we will be doing a couple of drop-in sessions in the library, and there's also 2 other days next week, which I'll put on our social media, where we will be in the Shamrock Lodge in Athlone and in Bloomfield, I believe, in Mullingar. So yes, Miriam's giving me the thumbs up. So Miriam, do you want to, is there something? Yeah.
Just while we wait to see if any questions come in, I meant to say earlier when Sophie and Jerry were describing their projects, and they're great projects, and you mentioned that they very much sit a little bit outside of what we would normally be talking about in terms of the arts, in that sort of pure function of the Arts Office to support the core arts forms. And that's what Creative Ireland has allowed us to do. It's tasked us with stepping outside of just that territory. But I know for any artists here who are in those, you know, in sort of theatre, film, television, literature, visual arts, of which there are a lot in Westmeath, your work sits very squarely in Creative Ireland. It absolutely does. So it's not that it's to the exclusion of what could sometimes be described as the more traditional art forms. Quite the opposite. We depend on our arts community very much to come to the table with their creative projects. I suppose the only thing to say is what Sophie mentioned, for example, the creation of a bronze piece. It's unlikely that would get Creative Ireland funding. That's either a public art piece or it, but if there was the makings of a piece of art or something in a public park that involved community and all of that engagement, then yes, that might get made. Do you know what I mean? So I accept that it's not purely for artistic practice making purposes, which is a very important part of the artist practice, but it's not specifically what this grant is about. However, again, we can help maybe look at how that might be made more expansive if that works for the artist, and it doesn't always. So just to acknowledge that.
Thanks, Miriam. And Jerry? Jerry, you're just muted there.
I always do that. Oh, you mute myself, which is probably a good idea. No, I'd just like to say that to the artists in general, is that if you come up with creative ideas, if you come up with anything that is interesting, well, then please come to us. The Matchbox Mountain, Porrick came to me on a Wednesday and he said, "Hi, Jerry. What would you like to make an application for an animation workshop?" And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And he said, "Oh, by the way, the application is to be in on Friday." So I went, but we got it in and it worked. Similarly, what the Tales My Granny Told Me project, the origin of that came from a meeting of the about the John Broderick Writer in Residence, and Keith Payne, the writer in residence, said that he'd like to do something with the migrant communities. And of course, me being Jerry, I don't let him say this. He didn't have to offer a second time. So I grabbed him. But again, look, creative ideas, interesting ideas, we're always into it. That's it.
Great, thanks, Jerry.
Great.
I don't think we've any questions then. If anyone does have questions, Laura posted my email address in the chat box there. My number is in the info booklet, but it is also 087 940 9317. But yeah, you can get that in the information PDF. And yeah, that's it from us, I think. It's been great talking to you all. Thanks so much. Really looking forward to seeing all your projects come in. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. I might stay on if Grace and Laura are okay to stay on.
Yeah, it's a pub. I might just set up another one because it is
Okay.
a public. And
Gotcha.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to stop the recording now.
Okay. I'll leave and I'll click into the new link.